Steve Palazzolo, our good buddy, Pro Football Focus senior analyst, co-host of Pro Football Focus NFL podcast. Good to see you again. Have you guys chopped up the Super Bowl and given out grades?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, it was we do it live pretty much and then review it the next day. So we get the grades out there, and the quarterbacks were as good as I think they looked, right? Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, two of the best players on the field, and the grades reflected that.
Okay, who had a higher grade between those two?
We had Hurts with a slight edge in his overall grade. Obviously, he had the worst play with the fumble, but Mahomes didn't really make a ton of mistakes, but Hurts had more special plays, right? Some of those downfield throws, and some of his best throws were incomplete. The Devontae Smith pass down the field that gets dropped, or it just ends up incomplete after the review. Some nice tight window double coverage tight window throws to Dallas Goedert. Another one on third down after avoiding the blitz. So Jalen Hurts was awesome in that game, and I think we're going to forget it though because the Chiefs won.
But it could lead to a big contract extension because I don't know if people had questions. Do you have questions now after what you saw with Jalen Hurts? If you were with the Eagles and you were going to be handing out that check to him, would you have any issue giving him $45 million a year?
Maybe 45. It's going to be fascinating. I would say the Eagles did such a good job building their team this past offseason because Jalen Hurts was on that first contract. It allowed them to go get A.J. Brown. It allows them to bring in a James Bradberry. They're going to lose a bunch in free agency this year, and it's going to be difficult to replace those guys because, Jalen Hurts is due the next big contract. So I do think he ends up in that $40 million range, and I do think the Super Bowl does go a long way to instilling confidence in what he could do going forward.
If the Jets called you and said, give us the best quarterback that you guys have graded that makes the most sense for the Jets, who would you recommend?
If you're willing to make the 1 to 2 year investment, I think it has to be Aaron Rodgers. The other option would be Lamar Jackson. If you want to trade with the Ravens, if they end up franchise tagging him and you're going to give up 2 1s, I think the first option would be Lamar Jackson, just because you could lock him up long term. But I have to go Aaron Rodgers over the other alternatives, the Derek Carrs of the world, the Jimmy Garoppolos. I think Rodgers probably still gives you that best 1 to 2 year option or opportunity to win it. And you're in an AFC East that has Josh Allen and the Bills, right? It already has the Dolphins with their explosive offense. I don't think status quo at quarterback is going to do it for the Jets.
Yeah, I said I would rather have Derek Carr if I'm the Jets because I don't think they're ready to. I think they're ready to compete now, and maybe they're going to be a playoff team. But I don't want the Aaron Rodgers, you're going to play for 1 year, I don't know about the next year, because I look at this as probably a 3-year window for the Jets where they can be really competitive given the weapons that they have. I don't want to go 2 steps forward and then 2 steps back with Aaron Rodgers in 2 years, and then we got to look for another quarterback.
No, I completely get it. It's just such a fascinating time in the NFL, though, right? Like when you have a guy like Derek Carr, who is, quarterback 11 to 15, depending on how you want to rank them, right? He's in that range. What a fascinating time where the NFL, there's a team that wants to move on from Derek Carr, but there's other teams who think Derek Carr is going to be the savior, right? That's what happened with Jared Goff with the Rams, right? The Rams had to move on from Jared Goff, who took them to a Super Bowl. Yeah. The Niners did everything to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo, who took them to a Super Bowl. But for other teams, those guys are great. So 3 years from now, the Jets might, if they had Derek Carr, they might be saying, oh, we want the next guy that's going to, be better than Carr.
But what about the Saints with Derek Carr?
I think the NFC South might be a little bit different. I think every NFC South team has been rumored to be looking at Derek Carr because they're all saying, well, Tom Brady retired. The Bucs weren't that good this year anyway. We could go win the division, right? I mean, teams still look at the short term and say Derek Carr, if he steps into that division, might be the best quarterback there, where he was the 4th best quarterback on paper, coming into the season in the AFC West. So I think it might be a little bit different for a team like the Saints that is always in credit card debt when it comes to the salary cap. They're much more willing to make that type of take that type of investment in a Derek Carr.
It was strange going into this season that Patrick Mahomes wasn't an all-pro the previous year, and it felt like he cooled off a little bit. Then you had the Tyreek Hill trade. It felt like defenses were playing a little softer, keeping everything in front. Josh Allen loved, Joe Burrow here, Justin Herbert. And we kind of forgot about Mahomes, and that's almost like forgetting about LeBron or Steph Curry. Why was it? Why do you think that we sort of moved on from Mahomes or forgot about him?
Well, because a year ago, we did see Mahomes' worst season. You just described it. And not only that, but an epic collapse in the AFC Championship. Like, they were dominant in the first half against the Bengals last year, but we have never seen Mahomes collapse the way he did in the AFC Championship. Fumbles, interceptions that may not have been his fault, but just not leading the comebacks that he normally does, not making that game-winning drive. It was his worst season, right? So understandably, then you lose Tyreek Hill. And it was a fair question to say, how much of Mahomes' production is Tyreek Hill plus Travis Kelce plus Andy Reid in the system? But I think you have to hand it to Mahomes, much like a Tom Brady through the years. Brady played in different systems with different personnel, and they always won, and they were always productive. Mahomes did that this year, right? He did it in a different style. It was a quick passing game. It wasn't the explosive plays down the field. He showed the patience. He adjusted to the league. A huge part in Mahomes' career right now, in a year 5 as a starter, to just win in a different way. So I understand why people may have doubted him a little bit, but I think he just answered all the questions and said, nope, I'm elite. I'm the top guy, and I'm still here.
Steve Palazzolo, he is the senior analyst for Pro Football Focus. How bad was Russell Wilson's season?
I mean, by far the worst of his career. He was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL by our grading system and pretty much any stat that you use. But I think that the really difficult part too is when you go back to about the middle of 2020. Remember, he was having that incredible season, on pace to break the touchdown record. Middle of 2020, though, things fell apart. 2021, he was okay, but then he gets hurt, wasn't good after the injury, and then last year was not good. So we're talking about almost a year's worth of games right now where Russell Wilson's been a bottom third quarterback. So it wasn't just this year, it was kind of the few years before that coming. So we'll see what Sean Payton can do with him, but it certainly hasn't been great for the last 32 games or so of Russell Wilson's career.
Do you get enough of a sample size with Brock Purdy to sign off on him as the starter in San Francisco?
To sign off as starter, absolutely, just because, the first year contract type of stuff, we hear that a lot when you have a cheap quarterback. And it's Purdy in this system with Kyle Shanahan. Not to take anything away from Purdy. He was excellent, but Kyle Shanahan has about a 15-year track record of elevating every single quarterback that he's played with from a production standpoint. They've all played better, including when he had Matt Ryan, the best quarterback that Kyle Shanahan's ever had. Matt Ryan almost breaks the league, 9 yards per attempt, wins MVP. So I think a lot of it's the playmakers in the play calling in San Francisco, but Purdy was excellent running that offense as a 7th-round rookie, which is really impressive.
What about Kyler Murray's grade? And I know we have to factor in the injury, and is he going to even be ready for this next season?
Yeah, so he was on this perfect trajectory of getting better every year. His first 3 seasons, it looked like he had peaked. He peaked in his 3rd year, and this year he took a big step back. I don't know how much of it was not having DeAndre Hopkins for the first 7 games, but Kyler had the highest percentage of big-time throws in the league in 2021, our highest graded throws, those special throws down the field. He was among the worst this year. So he wasn't pushing the ball down the field at the same level. His grade fell back to about league average, a little bit below league average this year. So a lot of questions with Kyler, and we might not even see him for the majority of next season because of the injury. So it was him progressing every single season, but definitely took a big step back here in 2022.
The Bears situation, you're on the clock with the number 1 pick, and you have Justin Fields already. How did Pro Football Focus grade out Justin Fields, and what would you do with that number 1 pick?
So we graded him as a below-average passer, but unbelievable runner, right? Exactly what we saw on the field. I've always thought he has the passing ability, so there's so much potential there with Justin Fields. I do think the Bears should be doing their due diligence on Bryce Young and the other quarterbacks. Bryce Young in particular, he's the number 1 quarterback on the PFF draft board. I do think you have to weigh taking Bryce Young at 1 and potentially trading Justin Fields. I think that's option number 1, potentially, if they like Bryce Young enough.
What would you do?
I would take Bryce Young, and I would look to trade Justin Fields. I mean, that's my first option if I have a good enough market for Justin Fields. The second option is trade down and say, okay, we have to play up to the Colts and the fact that they're desperate, the Panthers, that they're desperate, the Raiders, maybe even the Texans at 2. So you have to trade down. I think the worst thing the Bears can do is draft a non-quarterback. The worst thing they could do is sit at 1, draft a Will Anderson from Alabama, draft a Jalen Carter from Georgia. They have to maximize this first overall pick, either with a fresh rookie quarterback or with multiple draft picks to restructure that entire roster.
Great stuff as always, Steve. Thank you for your contributions this entire NFL season. All the great folks at Pro Football Focus. Thank you.
You got it. Thanks, Dan.
That's Steve Palazzolo. He might be the tallest analyst covering the NFL.